All around good guy, Phil Wallace, and of course, Phil, for those of you out there listening, just so there's no mistake, he's African American.
The music stopped.
That was a hard cut. That was a really hard cut. That was really good. Of course, I'm Kent Jones. I'm the owner, CEO, founder of DDOE Enterprises Jones, 216 The Net. For those listeners out there, I'm not African American.
What?
Right now, hey, listen, we are blessed as can be today.
Shocked.
Because listen, we got Anthony in the house. Can I call you Anthony? How do we address
Tony's
you?
fine.
Tony's fine.
You don't have to do the whole kid part of what.
Listen to that silky voice. You're gonna recognize that voice from the Reject Rundown. These guys are brilliant. They just went live last Saturday here. It was a sick episode. It was great to have them in here. And of course, if you are a Reject fan, if you are one of the rejects out there, you know this man carries the belts.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Can't do it alone, though. I got to have the crew and stuff like that. They're a big part of it. But yes, thank you. Thank you for having me, guys. Appreciate it very much.
SG3's out there. Sal, how are you, brother? Good morning. Listen, we titled this one, Is America Being Convinced?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So what did this, and I'm going to play it. I'm going to just hold it up to the phone here. Oh, let me unmute it.
But this is a poll from 1997, and this is what the polling data on race relations said. Nearly 9 out of 10 black teenagers said racism has little impact on their day-to-day lives, according to a Time CNN poll released on Sunday. The survey also found more than half of all teenagers, 62% of blacks, 58 whites, believe racism is a big problem. Asked about racism in their own lives, 89% of black teenagers said racism was a small problem or not a problem at all. Now you see that, and at first it's kind of shocking because it's unthinkable that a poll like that would have similar results today. Yet for those of us who lived through the 90s, it's actually not surprising at all because race was not an issue in the 90s like it is now. I'm not saying it was perfect.
We'll pause that right there. Let's just pause that right there. Phil, you went to high school in the 90s?
Yeah, I did. No, I went to high school in 2000.
Oh, in 2000. So I aged you a little bit. Yeah. But you were alive in the 90s.
I was alive in the 90s.
And where were you living in the 90s as a young...
Florida until 98, yeah.
Okay. And would you agree that racism wasn't bad in the 90s?
This poll was not done in Pensacola.
All right. Now, Tony,
yes.
You remember the 90s?
I do remember the 90s very well.
All
yes.
Right. You were a young guy, too.
I was. Elementary at that point, I would have to say. But, for elementary status, it wasn't that bad because I actually went to a community in Waukegan where it was either Hispanic dominant as well as African American dominant.
Right.
So for us, it was, I think we kind of came together in a sense because there's a lot of similarities.
Right.
We felt like we were, in a sense, the
You're
outcast.
Not African American.
That is correct. I am Mexican.
I got a TV. Your face out.
That's right.
It was at this point in the show I felt outnumbered.
Yeah. I am Mexican American, but my father's full blown Mexican from Mexico. My mother was born here, and her parents actually too was born in the States as well. So she's kind of like 5th generation, give or take.
Okay.
So for me, I'm a Mexican that don't speak Spanish, so that's a problem too in our culture because for us, we look down upon where we think we're too good or something like that. But no, I never see it that way. But I didn't really see the race thing until high school time, actually, to be honest. So that's where I first encountered it, and then it got physical at that point, too. But
was it Waukegan High School?
Well, I went to Waukegan High School. I was actually during a wrestling meet, and we went to outside, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Northbrook for like a tournament.
Ooh.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
so we ended up doing. So we went there. We had a little discrepancy. I lost the match. Fairly, I lost the match.
Right.
We go back to a little area to get our clothes on and stuff like that. I get back to the situation. And then the gentleman decided to just go ahead and talk to his teammates and say, hey, who did you beat and stuff? Oh, I beat that, spick out there. And I hear it, and I'm like, excuse me? I was like, hold on. I understand what I lost. I give you that. I'm a fair loser. But for you to call me like that, like, hold on a minute. So I'm like, what did you say again? So he repeats it again. So I freaking jawed him, like right across the face.
Sleep.
Yep. And then it got a little physical. We got a little altercation. My teammates stopped me and stuff like that. My coach ended up talking to me. He's like, and he was a white gentleman. So he's like, hey, what's going on? What that's not like you.
Right.
What occurred? What happened between all that? So I told coach, I said, listen, I'm getting dressed. This is what he said. He repeated what he said. And, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Right.
But I'm like, I don't find that respectful.
Oh.
So he's like, listen, they want you to go back to the bus, but I'm gonna tell what occurred. You're just gonna sit it out. You can't wrestle any other meets and stuff like that for the rest of the tournament, because I could have, but you're just gonna sit back and relax. I'm like, that's fine. I was like, that's fair. I'll stick there. So I went to go get a glass of water or something to drink. I passed by the gentleman on the benches, and I see this big old knot in his face, and I'm like, that was me. So I pointed back at him. I was like, that was me. So I'm like, I just left it alone. But that was my first encounter of that, and that was barely 15, 14 at that time.
Right.
So yeah.
So obviously there was a little tension.
A little.
Maybe back in the 90s.
A little.
But again, that's why I say, hey, in the 90s, let's finish this here.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was perfect. And I made this point on Twitter, and there were a lot of people that responded and said, whoa, what are you talking about? What about the Rodney King riots? And what about OJ and all this? We're not saying that it was perfect, that there was perfect harmony, that we were living in a post-racial utopia. No one is saying that. That's never going to happen. That's impossible. What I'm saying is that in the 90s, that's when we got the closest to racial harmony that we've ever been. And we've been going backwards ever since. 9 out of 10 black teenagers in the 90s saying that racism does not affect their daily lives. That proves the point. It's not that race never came up, but it wasn't this overriding concern. It wasn't suffocating everyone.
I agree.
Do you agree?
It's tough. Like I feel like there's a lot of conversations of stuff that would happen that just wasn't social media.
Exactly.
Right. So that I can't post a kid saying something to me at Crystal Lake South and then share it on my Instagram or share it on my Snapchat or share it on my Facebook.
Yeah.
But when I've talked about this on the show before, like all my friends still have these stories.
Yeah, that's where and as we prep for the show, that's kind of what I asked as well. Is it wasn't so quote unquote prevalent because was it in the 90s that you felt that you were on an island?
Right.
Okay, and so maybe I'm seeing things differently, and maybe the people talking to me, quote, I'm air quoting, help me see that I'm seeing this wrong.
Right.
Now we get social media involved, and the world flattens and shrinks, and all of a sudden you go, wait a minute, this story is being told 5,000 miles away.
Exactly.
Right. I think if when social media hit, and we experienced this during the show, if there wasn't those times where I was like, see, this is what we were talking about that we were told didn't happen, now you're just able to see it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. The Ahmaud Arbery situation, where we like in the South, this stuff happens where they'll do it and they'll get away with it because they know the police chief. Oh, that doesn't happen. Then Ahmaud Arbery happens. And you're like,
as you're watching it anyways during that incident, like you can kind of get the feeling like this isn't the first time this occurred. Like you just get the feeling, and that's always been. I don't
know what you guys are talking.
That's always been my niche.
Silence,
right. That's always been a niche. You get
Here's
the
your
vibes
badge.
when you're watching that stuff, and it's live on television, and you're letting them go ahead and speak for themselves. You just get the vibe of like, this isn't your first rodeo. Yeah. This is not your first rodeo.
What was the movie Michael B. Jordan did where he was like, with him and Jamie Foxx, like Justice or whatever, and it's like in Alabama, and the whole thing was a very similar situation. Where they accused him of murder, and then you find out years later he was innocent.
Yeah.
And then that law firm has freed thousands of people.
More afterwards.
since then. But thousands of people have situations where they're wrongfully accused or whatever.
So it's tough. And in the 90s, I was married. So in the 90s, I was in my mid to late 20s, and I lived in Iowa up until the end of the 90s when I moved to Illinois. And I can honestly say that when I was in high school in the late 80s, the tensions were big where I grew up.
Right.
And there were some serious fights out in the parking lot of school with golf clubs, and I mean and it wasn't, it was racial. There was racial tension. Right. I can tell you that I got my nose broke by a black guy. I probably deserved it. Come to find out, I don't hold that against him. So there was. Now in the 90s, I sit here and I go, my world was pretty vanilla. I've grown up, played basketball, loved basketball. I have great relationships with African Americans. I've got great relationships with whites. I got great relationships with, Latinos, Mexicans, all that good stuff. Mm-hmm. But to be honest with you, my circle was pretty vanilla. Right. Okay.
Same as here. I would have to say so. With wrestling mates and stuff like that. So, yeah.
And so I didn't see or feel it. Right. Of course, when you live in the suburb of Chicago, you hear it.
Yeah.
But hearing it and living it's two different things.
Very true.
So I can't say that that was the closest to racial utopia as this guy says that ever was, and we've gone backwards because I probably chose to ignore it.
Right. I think at that point in time frame, a lot of us kind of chose to ignore it just because it's like, all right, we just want to get on with our day. We want to do our things. But like if you're a Hispanic kid and with their family and stuff like that, and you're going grocery shopping, and for some odd reason, as you're going by the aisles, you get a weird vibe or a weird glare. It's like, you feel it, but more or less at that time frame, it's like we're focused on ourselves. We're focused on what we got to do. We're not really trying to pay attention. But I think with the fact of, like you said before, social media, once that started kickstarting, I think it gave everyone that type of, like, not saying entitlement, but like power of courage to just go ahead. I'm going to make a scene now. Let's do something.
And let's be honest. For many of us white people, Urkel was the black
guy. So many Carlton and Urkel references,
right?
I mean, how could race be bad when the black people I know are Urkel?
I mean, my favorite shows were all that. My favorite shows were those shows. I mean, I grew up with Bill Cosby. That was really my main show. I grew up. I like, exactly. I can't say it too much,
still
but
one of the best comedians out there.
I mean, my thing is the show was the show at that time frame. I had to give it to the rest of the people that was part of that show to sit there and say that was a phenomenal show that I grew up with.
Fat Albert, man, I grew up with Fat Albert.
That too,
real original cartoon.
Then you had Will Smith and Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Then you also had what's it called, Family Matters. Yeah, and there was a few other ones that slept in there that people didn't realize.
That showed that black people were police.
Mr. Cooper was my favorite, actually.
Oh, Hanging with Mr. Cooper,
Mr. Cooper was one of my favorites. Yes.
Yeah, I watched that too. Right. So I don't know if it was the closest to quote unquote utopia, but I think speaking for myself, not all whites.
Right.
I think that I chose probably to ignore what was out there. So let's finish this.
Go ahead.
And there was not this focus, if you're a black kid, convincing them that you're oppressed, you're a victim. There wasn't nearly as much white guilt foisted on the white kids. So compare that to today. I couldn't find this exact question asked in the last year or two, but there was a Gallup poll of 2021 showing how many black versus white Americans say that race relations are good, either somewhat or very. Only 33% of blacks said that we have good race relations in America in 2021, 43% of whites. In 2001, that number was 70% for blacks, 62% of whites. So 20 years ago, black people in this country, according to the polling, had a better view of race relations than even white people did. But a majority of everyone agreed that race relations are pretty good. And there was another question, is racism widespread? This is now 2021. 84% of black adults said, yes, it is. 59% of white. So 90% of black teens in the 90s said racism had little or to no impact on their daily lives. But now nearly as many black Americans say that it's a widespread problem. What this means is that teenagers growing up in the 90s said, well, it's not that big of a deal. It doesn't affect my everyday life. Since then, they've been convinced otherwise.
Ouch. Right now.
Jacob.
Now, I'm sitting here and I'm watching this. And I'm a numbers guy, right? I like numbers. This is what it is. And I'm like, well, these are interesting numbers. What is going on?
Kent, you and your phone today. It's all over the
dude
place.
at your house, huh?
Yeah. This is bad. I don't know. So anyway, the issue I have with this is not that it was a bad report. It's that he used the word convinced, which leads you to believe that the gentleman doing this feels that there isn't an issue.
Right.
And that people are, quote unquote, being brainwashed or quote unquote being convinced that there is racial tension in America. Agree or disagree?
I would have to. It's kind of hard. You have to kind of be a little 50-50 in this part because you have to agree in the sense that social media has played the major factor of people visually seeing things to sit there and say, now I'm woke, you would quote unquote say. Because now with that said, that same person after watching that video is now going to watch 10,000 other videos. And then all of a sudden in his head, it's like, okay, now I'm tweaking. Now, that makes sense. When I went to the gas station, so-and-so did this. That was probably because he, or something like that. Okay.
So, okay.
That part goes in there.
Okay. So you're saying I can see where the convincing
into place.
happens. All right. So let's go back to your high school when you got that guy, right? You jawed him up. Okay. So just tell me in the history books that you used to get your degree, high school diploma, what did it convince you of?
What did it convince me?
Yeah. Tell me about all of the rich Mexican heritage that taught you. Tell me about all the rich African American heritage that taught you or convinced you that there was.
See, my thing is in school, it's just more or less of the word. I was taught, wasn't necessarily through school. I was taught more at home.
Yeah.
Especially my father was like, listen, this is a particular word that, African Americans get called. That's not correct. This is a particular word that Hispanics get called. That's not correct. Same thing with, Caucasians. You would say Caucasian at that time, but, this is what they get called. That's not correct. Right, exactly.
Damn hunkies.
Or crackers and stuff like that. Whatever case it may be. I don't want to be all like, oh my God, vulgar and stuff here.
For the jugular.
But those are the type of words that you're like, listen, son, those are the type of words you do not say to any person, because at the end of the day, those are fighting words.
So you got good. Yeah, you were brought up.
Yeah. So that was my sense at home. So for me was, boom, that person called me that. That's kind of where that goes. Yeah. But our heritage is more or less of respect one another, regardless of color, regardless of facial expressions or whatever case to be. Just it's a matter of respect.
Respect, right.
So when
convinced,
when you jawed that guy, were you convinced from social media that he called you that
at that time,
or did you have an experience personally?
Yeah.
This kid called me this.
That experience,
right?
That was an experience,
and that's right. I feel like he's trying to downplay it because like people are like, no, this happened to me. No, you were influenced from social media. No. In elementary school, there was no social media when this kid called me this, or this was carved on my desk, or this was on the walk home. So like, when I'm followed in the store. Like I wasn't on like Facebook. Like, is Facebook thinking that I'm followed right now?
Right.
This cold?
That is true, though. It was just experience, based on experience.
And we've said this before, though. Like, I feel like when it comes to minority relations and minority experiences, it's the only time that it's up for debate. No one would tell. We questioned 1,000 white women to see how they were raped, and we found that they were influenced and convinced that they were touched, or no one would do that.
Right.
Why? Because that'd be a-hole-ish and insensitive.
Right.
Even when people try to downplay the Me Too movement, like, no, these were her experiences. And if I love Bill Cosby, but if he did that stuff, then he's got to go to jail.
There you go.
I can't be like, well, are they being convinced from other women?
Correct.
I'd be misogynist. I'd be an a-hole.
Right.
However, if you do it towards black people or Hispanic, like, it's okay. And other people are like, well, these stats from this random person who has no credibility says this, so you're making it up.
Yeah.
Ben, absolutely brilliant. Thanks for tuning in. It says black people were slaves in history books, and then poof, one day Martin Luther King. That's high school history.
Him and the Fab Five.
That's why I was laughing.
Yeah.
I was there. That's brilliant. So
no progression.
So do you feel that the American public is being convinced that there is a racial issue?
Oh, that's
okay. So here's the other part that I so like when you grow up around at an all white school, right? If you're mixed, you grow up at an all white school. You have this thing when you go to your white friend's house, whether if you date a girl or whether you're just hanging out with your friends, and they're going to warn you about a relative.
Yeah,
and they're going to say, okay, this is my grandfather, and he is racist, and he's always been that way. Okay, cool. So you have, and he's always. Papa just skipped the 90s? If you can admit that your grandfather, grandmother, aunt, whatever has always been racist, that's how she is. My parents are fine with you, though. Not a big deal. But you know that Nana's been slinging N-words since the 80s.
I would have to concur to that.
How can you say that she was just docile for the whole 90s decade? No, sir.
Yeah.
No, sir. The thing is, you were always able to discredit and downplay when people said this does happen. Mm-hmm. But in your own circles, similar to how we talked about how white people will say the N-word amongst white people, and then those same white people will say, well, we're not racist.
Well,
did they skip the 90s?
But he said, hey, man, they were pulled.
They were pulled.
Statistics.
But what did you say? Remember the older gentleman you said the colored word? He's like, you could just tell it's a guy who said this for decades.
Very comfortable, as you said.
Exactly. You're very comfortable. You can hear the tone.
You skipped it?
You hear the tone and everything.
He's comfortable. He's familiar. I'm taking my shoes off.
No.
Now again, in the 90s, perhaps it was, hey, I'm at the mall, and I roll up with the clipboard. Hey, hi, how are you? You know what? You get a free Cinnabon if you answer a few questions for me today.
I believe it.
And here's this crazy white dude coming up and saying, hey, would you say that there's some racial tension? As you look around the wall, peppered with white people.
Yeah.
Right. Nope.
Nah, you're cool.
I'm all right.
Put her there.
Because as soon as you know for a fact to say yes, everyone thinks
it over to the Gap.
Right.
Guys gonna be looking this way. You're like, I can't get a Cinnabon. Now I'm about to go. I just got here. I needed some shirts and stuff too.
I was gonna run over to the Gap and get some
some khakis, some hey dudes.
Hey.
I'm not here for none of this.
So we roll back to that. I roll back to that. I roll back to that and go, well, who's asking the question?
Yeah.
Where was the poll being taken? Was it African Americans rolling into Cabrini Green and saying it? Was it white people in the mall asking people at the mall?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where this poll was taken. Number one, and you're using good statistics, which I absolutely appreciate.
I wish it was Cordova Mall. So in Pensacola, Florida, there's a mall, and when you walk and you
Evergreen
stop,
Plaza.
When you look at the mall, me and him will never walk in the mall together. Uh-oh. So I was there 2018, and I'm sitting there, and the only time you see this is Navy.
Okay.
Or you see like a black dude with his white girlfriend or whatever. But you like me and you might go me and Deshaun will go
Yeah.
and we'll wave at Kent and Scott from the other side, like real quick, but we're not going to stop for conversation. And I was sitting there for like an hour and I was like, I met one of my friends like, is this still how it is? Because in 2018, so guess how it was in the 90s?
Wait, so in 1980,
it wasn't like this.
No, it was not.
In,
No,
in,
it's true.
in 1989, Walter Shaw, and if you're listening, Walt, I appreciate it. And David Brumfield, David, of course, were my teammates in college, and they brought me back to Chicago for a weekend, and we went to Evergreen Mall.
How was that?
Right. And this was the first time I seen a black Santa. And I was like, what? And that's when I knew my world was pretty small.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And me and Butch is 6'3". Witt is his last name. Blonde hair, blue eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, cellophane, right? And we're there and enjoying. But you could sense when we saw Black Santa, we were like
a little paused.
We are uncomfortable, out of the comfort zone.
This is not
Kansas.
This is not the norm. This is not what's going on here.
Even though my dear friends are African American, that's what it shook me a little bit to go, oh, well, I guess, yeah. Right,
mm-hmm.
And then it starts making sense to me a little bit. And that was in the late '80s.
Hey, look, man! If you guys did it to Jesus, we can do it to Santa. All right,
right. So then we rolled downtown, and of course, Dave grew up here in Chicago, and he driving like a Chicago guy, and I'm I'm like, zipping in and out of traffic, popping in and through on sidewalks. I mean, how people in Chicago drive. Right. We get to Walt's house, and his mom's got a sweet potato pie. It's the best pie I ever had in my life.
Mm-hmm. Welcome.
Oh my goodness.
Welcome.
Oh my goodness.
There you go.
And all was good then, because
now it's making me hungry.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
but I mean,
God rest her soul.
You gotta also look at it too. Like now, looking at it all, that you gotta realize, and if you put yourself back in high school, it wasn't necessarily media driven, but you can kind of tell within high school that there were sections. There were the Hispanic sections. There were the white sections. Not necessarily those who mix with African Americans because of sports. Where I saw the most is why they would mix is because of sports.
Right.
Right.
But in general, you can kind of tell just where that dynamic is at. Also,
you see the teachers
a big time, as well as even out of state, out of country, not interns, but what they used to call them, students. Those type of students that come out of the country, or whatever.
Foreign exchange.
There you go.
Yeah,
There you go. Foreign exchange students. You can kind of tell they would mix with each other too as well. So if you realize and you look back, like, okay, you're right. This, like within high school,
segregation.
It was. You could kind of tell it was, but it just wasn't being vocalized as much back like how it was back then. Right.
Crystal, thanks for popping on. Crystal says, hey, what about 1984 Sentencing Reform Act and the war on drugs in the 90s that we now know disproportionately targeted minorities, mostly blacks, that led to the mass, incarcerations. Right. Man, I'm
Hollywood.
Mass incarcerations and longer sentencing of black men. It never happened.
Which makes a valid point. War on drugs in that decade.
But then we put that guy in the prison.
We added the most African Americans to the prison system ever.
I'm realizing that what was that Netflix special 13th?
Yeah.
That really, I mean, I'm very keen on shows like that because I think because back then we weren't, like you said, social media wasn't really there, so there's a lot of stories and a lot of incidents that were not given to the public to kind of really not get attention on, right? So with these type of shows, you kind of now it opens up your eyes to kind of say this really happened at this portion of the states or something like that. So you're like, this really.
Watch High on the Hog. I love it.
High on the Hog.
High on the Hog.
High on the Hog.
I'll write that down right now.
So this social media post, I was digging. I was like, okay, until he used the word convinced, and it went from maybe a factual thing then to a holy crap, 100%. Golly, holy crap, 100%.
No, there's a silence button on it.
I know. Opinion.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
I would have jumped in because of this show and whatnot and done more research on those.
Yeah.
Really kind of dug in.
Mm-hmm.
But when he used convince, I go, oh.
It's one of those.
It just went out the window.
Yeah.
Because I would have loved to come here and say, oh, well, hey, look, this posted. I got these stats and take a look at this. So let's talk about that. But I can't even do that now because he's like, people are being convinced. Every day they're being convinced.
Or something.
Listen, you don't know what's outside your windows if you got dirty windows and your shades are pulled.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, you pull the shades and clean your windows, and you're like, oh,
right.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Most Americans, there's the Jim Carrey movie.
Which one?
Good morning, good afternoon, good night. The
Truman
Show.
Truman Show. Yeah.
Most Americans live in that bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, is that by choice or is that by? Or is that just by society?
I think it's by choice.
I would have to agree with that.
Here's why. Like, okay, I can't tell you what it's like to be a Mexican.
Facts.
I cannot. I can. From what Sal's told me, I've gathered some
I
things.
can. I dressed as one for Halloween once. I also blackface.
But imagine hypothetically, imagine you telling me, if you go to Mexico City on this date on Fridays, this is what the whole town does. And that upsets me. Mm-hmm. You're wrong. Because I saw a meme and that doesn't happen. One, why are you mad?
Right.
What does anything that happens in Mexico City have to do to upset me and Crystal? Like
Correct.
If that's what you're doing, if that's the experience, okay, so there's this, they have that, we dance it. Right. You're a liar.
Yeah.
You're a liar. You know why? Because my friend Kent Jones said that does not.
That is not how it happens. And he showed me a video and played it. Okay?
Statistically speaking, most Hispanic cities don't even do what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It happens very little. Why are you like this over someone else's experience?
Exactly.
Land of the free, home of the brave. No,
you want to stay in your bubble.
Yeah.
You're not even open to hearing what happens here or in Waukegan.
Anywhere else.
So that's where I feel like it's self-imposed.
Mm-hmm.
Send us you're tired, you're weak, we're a melting pot. But nobody please enter.
Please. Stay out. Stay back.
Can't be Indian, can't be black,
stay back.
Can't be Hispanic, can't be Asian. Can't be Native American.
Right.
Everyone else is welcome.
It's
a hell of a game of guess who.
I don't think it's as much convincing as it is going, oh, wow, I can see. Let me look out my window here. Right? And people going, oh, there is more to history than what I learned in the school. Oh my gosh, that poor man did get beat down for no apparent reason because he ran. That one didn't get beat down because he ran. Mm-hmm. What's the difference?
Apprehended. You don't say.
You don't say. So I was watching, probably the Tower Heist. Have you seen that?
No.
It's a movie.
I've heard about it a lot.
Ben Stiller. It's got
Eddie Murphy.
Eddie Murphy.
There you go. Yeah, I've been wanting to see that one for the longest now.
And so Eddie Murphy holds a gun, has a gun, and the FBI hits him. They're like, boom, 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 FBI. And he throws his gun down, and Stiller picks it up. He goes, I'm going to shoot him in the foot when he opens the door. He goes, no, you're not. Because you're not the one they're going to shoot at. And he takes the gun, he throws it. He goes, trust me, you aren't the one. He said some Eddie Murphy things. It was very, very funny. I won't spoil it, but because of this show, I go, oh, that's true.
All right,
that's true.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing. What was it then? Will Smith, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, when they're taking the the car for their Uncle Phil's lawyer buddy, and then freaking Will's like, hey Carlton, man, they're gonna make you do this, don't do that, and he was on point, to the point, and then as soon as they're like, he gets on the car, like, already prepped and ready, man, this is what happens over here, Carlton, like you open your eyes, man.
Don't tell him it's not your car.
Right.
Well, officer, it's not my car.
It's my father's business partner.
Will's like,
all right, we're done. He's gonna ask for it, he's gonna go. I'm like, so yes. So stuff like that.
And that's why I don't think it's convincing, rather, more than saying, oh, I see. You don't know how good a particular food is until you taste it, or how bad it is. You don't get convinced because you've tried it.
Right.
You go, oh, I kind of like this. I tell my kids all the time, like, you have to try it. It could be the best thing to you, and you wouldn't eat this food ever, and it'd be your favorite food. You just got to try it. Exactly. Now, it may be your worst food, and it'll turn you sick, and you don't want anything to do with it, but now you know.
I'll be honest, like, same thing with Hispanics. Mole is what? The number one dish for Hispanics or Mexicans in the world. Right. I hate it to a passion. I cannot stand mole.
I don't like the flan.
Me neither. Like, like, those are very strong, potent type of flavors, and that's not in my palate at all whatsoever. So no matter how many different styles of mole, because it's pretty much all the same ingredients inside of it, it's still gonna taste like crap to me. Don't give it to my plate. I don't want it. And like for all these,
you've been convinced that it's no good.
Yeah, I've been convinced. Yeah. So like, no.
And that's the issue that we have. That's the tension we're trying to, because we do have a strong majority of people still today who lean on that. This is ridiculous. You're convincing. You're doing this. You're doing that. It's not the way it is. It's not that bad. It's not that bad.
Now, is that because they're not living? If they're not going through those type of situations, more than likely. More than likely. You have to say.
But it isn't. But at what point? Convincing is, I'm sitting here telling you a story.
Yeah. Right.
And I keep telling you and trying to convince you or sell you the idea that the story is true.
Mm-hmm.
Facts are facts. Yeah. That's why you led that entire post with statistics.
Right.
You tried to use some facts.
Right. Exactly.
But now we can go back to the 90s and go,
and even then, you're starting to get a bunch of these videos and movies and stuff that really shed light on the situations that happen at hand. That we weren't behind the scenes and all that. We didn't have social media to let us know what occurred and who said what during that time frame. So now that we're getting all of that information coming out now, as we're now elder in a sense, it's like it was present. It was there at that time. So it's like, what are you going to do with that type of information? Is that going to change your whole thought process now to how you go outside the door to perceive things?
Hindsight's always 20/20. You get a clearer thing looking back. Mm-hmm. So let's go back. Let's go back to our good friend Colin Kaepernick. His protest silent takes a knee because of police brutality.
Right.
Police brutality.
Right.
Called, every word 3 ways to Thursday, and no talent, blah, blah, blah. And because of his protests, and some will argue he wasn't that talented. He had talent. He's a very smart guy as well. Lost his professional football career.
Right. Basically.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to get into an argument about Colin Kaepernick. What I'm saying is, now let's take that lens and look back just a little bit farther into the 90s where there was better harmony. And he even brought it up. The Rodney King beatdown.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we're upset at Kaepernick for taking a knee about quote-unquote police brutality, which... okay, it exists, right? As we have talked several times on this show. Mm-hmm. Now do we understand that story a little bit better? Or in the 90s, was it just a one-off? That's how it was kind of played off, right? Hey, it's a one-off.
Yeah.
Now can we look back in that and go, ooh, maybe there's been brutality for a long time? Or am I trying to convince you of that?
Even with what Crystal said, as far as like the longer sentencing for African Americans, when you look at how many people had wrongful sentencing or longer sentencing, harsher punishment, what was that driven by? If you see upwards of over tens of thousands of people in that decade, how many one-offs do you need before you realize a trend?
That's another thing too. It's the realizing of the trend. What was the common denominator behind all of those decisions? And if everything seems to be kind of, you put things like stacking next to each other, and the only thing that seems to be off is someone's race, then it's like, okay, so that's where it led to.
It's an Ohio State
has
football
nothing
player.
to do with the race. They broke the law. Brittany Griner had an illegal substance smuggled into the country. She's guilty, got 9 years. Oh, and by the way, you want to come back home to America? The one where you said is hold you down and this, that, the third. And now you're like, wait, all I want to do is get home and you hated this country. Listen, you deserve what you get.
Right, but as we've talked about it, I met a Chris Lake Chamber. Guy says, man, I gotta be straight with you. Man, I had some situations that if I was your color, it would have been a different path. Me and my buddy were drunk driving one day. We were high, flipped the car, hit a pole. We pushed it back over. I'm holding my door closed. He's holding his door closed. Cops pull me over. Oh, you're so-and-so's son. Okay, I'll follow you guys home. He broke the law too. What's the difference? Because she's got 9 years for a vape pen. He had drugs, underage driving, drunk driving, reckless endangerment, and got chaperoned home.
I can show you six people in America who are black who that happened to, too. So that justifies it.
I can't drive sleepy.
No, I cannot. No, I cannot. I'm like, luckily enough, my record's pretty clean. Where if I get whoop whoop, I'm like, look, officers for my ID, man. I got insurance. I got my card. Don't like my hands are on the dash. Like, let me be. Let me be.
I was
sorry.
just listening to this worship. I was listening to Journey. It fires me up. You understand?
You know it. Go.
Don't stop believing. It gets me every time.
But I mean, that's a very.
Okay.
That's a very common thing, though, and I think that kind of has that was a big attention getter, especially looking back in the past. When you see those type of scenarios where this type of illegal action occurred, but also this other person had that same illegal action occurred. Why was this other person let go with just a slap on the wrist, and why were these guys punished to the freaking maximum and beyond?
Right,
extra. Entitled in the sense.
Remember when the swimmer raped the girl?
Oh,
he got 6 months, and there was an Ohio State football player who was accused. He did time. They didn't want to embarrass him or mess up his career.
Which is another big key factor. Oh, we don't want to mess up his school. He has a future ahead of him, and that's a really big type of word that they like to. I'm gonna say it. See, look at me saying they. See, look at me saying they. You're like, using a pronoun. I'm like, but let's put it that way. That's their pronoun, but in a sense, like that is the type of wording or verbiage that is said in order for that person to let go and be let go at that time.
You can keep it real here, son.
Yeah.
That's what the bridge is all about.
Oh yes.
Be mad real,
I know.
son.
I'm like, I had to. I'm like, but that's just that's a realism.
Yeah,
we gotta put it. It's realism.
Quick shout out to our friends over at Gold Shield Services for supporting the show and backing us. Check them out at www.goldshieldtoday.com. These guys are brilliant. If it has to do with the home, plumbing, heating, electric, smart home, HVAC, whatever, give them a call. They've got you covered. Gold Shield Services are just brilliant. We thank them for their support. And someday I'll get this right and we'll get them up there.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What's more dangerous?
Oh.
Hypothetically going with, I'm convinced that I'm followed when I go to round Kohl's. I'm convinced that people clutch their purse when I walk past. I'm convinced of these things. I'm convinced that I have a higher chance of being pulled over if I drive down 14. Those are things I'm convinced of. Mm-hmm. Cool. What's more dangerous, that or you being convinced that he's a drug cartel and I'm a gang member? And it doesn't matter if I wear the same polo. It doesn't matter if I got a 4.5. It doesn't matter how well we articulate ourselves, which kudos, by the way.
I think so. I appreciate you.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. As you saw on the show, I could wear a teddy bear t-shirt and I'm a Crip.
Oh, yeah, that was a Crip.
And I'm a Crip.
We chose the wrong game.
What? Right. Because teddy bears with crowns means Crip. What's more dangerous? Crip teddy bears.
Crip teddy bears.
Or me being aware of being followed through stores. Every time you see me and him, we're drug dealers, we're criminals, we're thugs. Every time you see us on television, that's the only thing that you hear. Mm-hmm. That's what you're being convinced, and we know that.
So one of my favorite motivational speakers, or I would just stop what I'm doing. Les Brown.
Yeah.
Absolutely love Les Brown. Les, thanks for tuning in.
Mamie Brown's boy.
Mamie Brown's boy. I always roll back to what his 6th grade teacher told him, is that someone's opinion of you doesn't have to be your reality.
Right.
Yes, thanks.
Now, I have to say, your opinion of someone doesn't have to be your reality. So which is more dangerous? Absolutely more dangerous, me convinced that you're a drug cartel and you are a teddy bear crip, right?
TBC!
Like Snoop just walking around.
Because that ruins me as a person.
Yeah.
Right.
But I don't see that. And I want to reflect that out onto you guys and say, you are the problem. If I'm convinced of that, then it's made my internal yuck.
Right.
Okay. Because that's just bad. So my opinion of people, okay, shouldn't be their reality. Is how I want to spin that. And when I say that, if I find out that you're a teddy bear crip, then I don't have to stop loving you or saying that you're a good person. I just have to stop hanging with you.
Right.
If I decide not to.
The same thing.
If I find out in real life, you keep saying, hey, can't just, keep hang on.
I'm gonna put something in the trunk.
Yeah,
Just drive.
hang on to this for me.
Be like, just look straight, make sure there ain't nobody coming around.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you see some red lights and stuff. Let me know.
Then I can go, okay. But at the same time, you shouldn't throw shade at people. I don't know what you're going through, whatever. I'm not going to go out there and say, listen, I want you to tune in to the Reject Rundown, but that brother sells more drugs than you. They call him a pharmacist.
Hold on, man.
I don't know.
I got what you need. Just let me know.
High ratings, not the only thing.
24/7, open 24/7.
Yeah. We need to take that note. Right? So I love what he said, because at that time in his life, he needed to hear that. Don't let somebody's opinion of you become your reality.
Yeah.
And the truth is, don't let your opinion of someone become your reality of that person.
Right.
Period.
But this is what I'm saying. I don't care if someone thinks I'm a TBC.
Right.
That's fine. However, if I get pulled over because they think I'm TBC, if I get a gun drawn on me because they think I'm TBC, have your opinion in your bubble, in your mind, whatever. But if now Elijah is prone to be aggressive in school,
off his hair, huh?
Yeah, that
Jeez, bro.
we're working through it. Anyway, if his teacher who thinks he's a TBC because she thinks I'm a TBC, and it doesn't matter how smart or polite or yes ma'am, he's the only kid in the class that yes ma'am, no ma'ams. If he's prone to be angry, if he expresses himself at all. Now, Billy just kicked a desk, and that's fine. But if Elijah goes, shoot, he's got an attitude problem. That's when that person's opinion of us becomes a problem for us too. I'm cool with you thinking what you need to think, but when you start to take it out on people,
that's another story.
That's another story. And that's where we're currently in. So that's why I said, what do you think is more dangerous? It's not just, you think I'm cool or you think I'm not cool. No, you're allowed to arrest me. You're allowed to beat me. You're allowed to kill someone and get away with it. You're allowed to hire, fire. You're allowed to tell me where I live and can't live. All for fear of the TBC.
Yeah.
That's when it becomes a problem. Yep. So I don't understand why this guy took more time to research this than he is explaining this.
That's true. Because the same thing, if I'm not mistaken, is what's the little thing that came about Morgan Freeman when he was interviewed about races, and it says like it doesn't exist, and he's like, if you stop looking at the colors and you stop really paying attention to that, then it'll stop. But when you gotta look at the person, not what they are, right. Or in a sense, what I guess you would say what the color is. It's based on who you are as a person. Right. I'm a human being. You're a human being. We breathe. We laugh. We freaking all that type of stuff. The exact same thing. What does the color have to do with anything? at all whatsoever. So I'm like, there you go, Morgan Freeman. There you go. Shut up.
Morgan Freeman. That's it. Hey, good point, Jess says. Thanks, Jess. It probably was about my point.
It's probably most likely.
More likely.
We're going percentages.
Yeah,
let's go.
Yeah, exactly. The percentage of it is the highest. That seems about right.
Can't shake it, huh?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Out of the three of us, you feel the most qualified. Huh?
So, if you feel that people are being convinced out there that racism is bad, and the issue that he also said was that we're going backwards. If you look at those polls, yes, but again, when you think you're on an island, you're going to answer one way,
right?
Because you don't want to be bombed,
right?
And now when you realize you're not on an island, you're like, yeah. Let me speak up a little bit here.
Right.
Now, I don't think we're going backwards. I don't care what those polls said. I don't think we're going backwards. I think we're going forward. Because there's shows like this, because we're starting to go, wait a minute.
Right.
Just wait a second. The way that it's going about is so I will always fight against anyone who tries to bring up, the white guilt. Okay. Because God I didn't get to choose what color I am, just like y'all did.
Right.
Okay. And that would, if I'm guilty for being white, then I'm saying God made a mistake. Okay. Are there privileges that have happened in my life? Yeah, we've talked about them on here.
Yeah.
Right. But I can't feel bad about that. I can feel horrible for my friends who haven't had the same privilege.
Okay. Yeah.
But I can't feel bad or guilty because God made me white. Simple as that, right? Yeah. And people struggle, and of all color, races, and if I lived in Afghanistan, guess who's going to feel it? The white guy.
Yeah.
Okay, my daughter just spent 2 weeks in Greece, and she was like, all we knew is they were like, oh, tourists, and they gave us a different feel until the person who lives in Greece or is from Greece said, oh, hey, they're with me. Oh,
right. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the old saying is, if you were white, travel the world and you will understand racism, prejudice. Right.
Right.
But here in America, not so much.
Makes sense.
Okay. So that's why I say I will always push back against white guilt. I'm not guilty for the way that God made me.
I think you pronounced accountability wrong. There's less white guilt back then. No, you just weren't being held accountable.
Yeah, I would agree. Correct.
I could call you whatever I wanted to and didn't have any consequence. But now you want me to feel bad because I called you the N-word in Lowe's. I want you accountable because you shouldn't talk to people that way. So that's why I put you on blast. Maybe if you didn't say horrible things to people that you thought that you were above, you wouldn't be in these circumstances. I don't want your grandkids to feel shame. However, I want you to know that this is no longer okay. You're not going to talk to me that way.
Exactly. Right. At this point in time right now, that's exactly where I feel like that's the common ground that needs to be kind of put out there. Put your head on straight, put your pants. You're talking to me. That's
his octaves went high. Hit the button.
I mean, actually talking about that was one thing I kind of always, when growing up, I had to mention that to my brother, who you met, Afro Puff guy, my Zach the Mac on the show. Yeah, so we're growing up. He was the one with the baggy pants, the big old T-shirts and stuff like that. And in my head it's like me knowing that you're half African American. You could tell based on your color. You could tell based on your fro. And you can
a
tell.
nice afro.
And,
Impressive.
It's a lovely
Yeah.
afro. I keep trying to tell him, let's trim it around, but let make it look nice and froey. But,
Right.
he doesn't want to touch it, so it's okay. So, like, telling him, like, look, man, I'm just worried for you when you go out in the world and you go to the mall and you're doing something and something happens or whatever, you're going to be looked at, the first one. Why? Because you're an attention getter.
Right.
The hair, the clothes, right off the bat is attention getter.
Right.
So pull up your pants. Button up a little bit, at least that will diminish the attention, tad. But, and again, it's kind of sad for me to let him know that. Like, why do you have to worry about that?
Yeah.
Why can't you just go out there and just dress how you dress and be who you are?
Alex said it wasn't Lowe's, it was a Cracker Barrel. And listen, if you think that a white person came up with that hash brown casserole, you're wrong.
I don't say
wrong.
that. I don't say that name. I say the C word barrel.
C-word barrel.
Out of respect for my wife.
Change the name of the barrel. Just change the name of the barrel. Barrel.
I think it's brilliant.
Good food.
All the old white people.
Yeah.
They're all sitting on the barrel. It's like shooting crackers in a barrel. Oh, sorry. That's Fisher. So that's the big push that I have. And I have to say this in this manner.
Mm-hmm.
If we as a society didn't get that irritation, that white guilt, and push way over here, then no change is ever going to happen.
Right.
But because we had to push way over here as a society and white guilt and reparations and blah, 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 it made us go, wait a second. Now let's look back and where is that common ground? And if because we have never pushed this far, and that's what makes a lot of people uncomfortable.
Right.
Because we've never pushed this far, it makes it uncomfortable. Now, as uncomfortable, I have to do something. No. When I was comfortable, I did it.
Right. You sat back and relaxed.
But, okay, remember how we had the other conversation after the show last week and we talked about how, like, there's stuff that's being discovered that's true.
Yep.
But when you brought up this true stuff, you're a conspiracy theorist.
Twin Towers.
Do you feel like this is do you feel like it's another conspiracy theory type thing? Whereas if we're asking you just to be accountable for the stuff that you're seeing, oh, it's white guilt. You can't make me feel guilty. I shouldn't feel ashamed for my skin. I didn't say that. I just said stop using the N-word.
Yeah.
Oh, I shouldn't feel guilty. Well, I didn't own slaves. So, no, I'm just saying you
don't say it.
Don't say the word.
Right.
Don't follow people through stores. Don't feel like you call
right.
grown men boy. Don't do those things. Well, I can't apologize.
But you can apologize for saying the word.
All I'm asking for you is to chill out and stop the racist stuff.
Right.
Do you feel like white guilt is a ploy to stop the accountability side, to deflect that there's any type of credibility to what's being said? So that they don't have to change? You said you change because it's uncomfortable. But if I can call you crazy, if I can just put off as white guilt, they don't have to take that mental click doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. Oh, they're just trying to white guilt me.
There's a lot of people out there that just that won't change. They don't. Again, their shades are pulled and their windows are dirty. Mm-hmm. And when you deal with human beings, we got that forever. I mean, people still don't understand. People who never visited a statue still don't understand why that statue was torn down. Well, you're changing history. Nope. Actually, by tearing it down, we're creating history. Right. Think about that, mm-hmm. right? So I'm gonna move back to Brittany Griner. Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of, she hates America because what she said, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, but you're the same guy who will wave an American flag and talk about all the freedoms that flag gives you. That gives her the freedom to talk however she wants.
That too.
That gives her the freedom to do and say whatever she wants.
Expressive.
You will fight for that right in the Constitution, but when she does it because it doesn't go with what you're saying,
your ideology, right?
Now she's wrong.
Now she's a problem.
And I'm going to tell you this. It has nothing to do with, she's been playing over there for years. For years. She's well known in that area. Listen to what I'm saying and watch how she comes home. This has nothing to do with her or her situation. Right. It has all to do with a political prisoner swap. Mm. And that's all it was a play to get certain people out of America. And this athlete is a pawn. Is it
right now?
And in the past 60 days, there was an event that had a lot of women upset.
Yeah.
Do you feel if those women were arrested overseas, America would say, "Well, you hated America 60 days ago. Your white behind needs to stay over there in whatever country."
Right.
Anytime I've seen other people that it doesn't go like as far as like you said their ideology, it's perfectly fine for them not to like this or them not to like this president and speak very openly about how this country's going to crap because this person's in office, blah 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 blah. But no one, in any other situation, no one said when you stormed the Capitol, okay, we'll leave the country. They didn't get that response.
Right.
Right. What's the difference?
Just because it's in the extremes that balance is found, and I've said it before, pain is the greatest motivator for change. Let's welcome it. Perspective. Happy Friday. Thanks, gentlemen. Always glad.
What's the one above it?
Yeah,
always
I think Alex reposted.
He broke his leg.
There you go.
Alex says, I'm not accountable for my ancestors. I am accountable for
my leg of the tree.
From my leg
of the tree. That rooted, and hopefully all future branches will be good, equal people. Yeah. And then Kendall thanks says I was referenced as quote unquote boy very recently. You must be mistaken. It's 2022. There's not a person out there who would say that, Kendall. I say that in jest and laugh about it. I thought I silenced that. Obviously, I didn't. But what does he say? A person who said it seemed like was a natural feeling. Again, like they had said it before. It's all too comfortable.
Yes.
It's all in respective person's belief, the way they were raised, etc. Yeah, absolutely. That goes back to what Alex is saying: is I can't control what they did. I can only control moving forward in the branches that I reach out. Listen, we're over the hour. This has been absolutely fantastic. You got to tune in. We got the Reject Rundown. These guys are coming at it with. We're excited to have them on. It was a great show. It was huge debut here. Phil and I are here every Friday, chilling out,
hanging out,
just bridging. Because we feel that it's better. we feel that it's better to build a bridge than blow it up. So this is good stuff. And when you see things, our big hope is when you hear social media posts and things like that is to listen very closely, because there's going to be a lot of people out there who use those statistics.
Right? Yeah.
But remember, it was really an opinion. And those statistics were used to sway to try to convince on the other way. I think this show's busy, but he's laughing. That's a joke. People don't send hate mail to Alex. Listen, for all of us here at 21.6 and that, thanks for getting stuck in the net with us this morning.